Good morning. My name is Bill Scrimshire. My name is not Carolyn Connor. So forgive me, I've been pressed into service at the last second. So if I make all kinds of mistakes, you can just yell out the corrections. Lunch, we will be having lunch today. And it's down the hall. If you are a visitor, you may have lunch free of charge. And that brings us to visitors. Do we have any visitors today? Visitors who have been brought by members, or maybe members have met someone, or maybe you brought yourself. Right, here's one who seems to have brought himself. We'd like visitors to stand and can you give us your name and where you're from and whatever. Good. Well, thank you for coming. And some of our best members started out as forumitarians, so good for you for being here. And over here.
We are Meredith Evans, fourth generation UUs.
Wonderful. Wonderful. That's how you do it. Just go from church to church. And your first you use San Diego.
Yeah.
Great city, great climate you have.
No, this is a much better climate.
Oh, you like this? You're one of those four-season persons.
Yeah.
Oh, good for you. Okay, back here we have some. Wonderful. From New York City or New York? Oh, well, there's an All Souls there too, so you can just fit right in. Any others that I have missed? Right here. Welcome. Well, we're glad to have you. Glad to have a first-timer. And back here?
I'm Dan Hotchkiss. I'm a Unitarian Universalist minister. I live near Boston, and I'm here on business. My business is consulting with churches. And I'm partly intrigued to be here because I peeked through your window and saw a stack of my book.
What?
I thought, well, maybe I'll come back. I'll need to sneak out and catch a plane before too long.
Well, great, but whatever length of time you can stay, that's great. Any others that I have missed? There are enough people standing. I'm not always sure who's a visitor and who's one of us who has not chosen to sit down. Okay, but if you are a visitor and have time to do so, we do hope you will stay for lunch because the lunch is on us today. We do have an announcement that's not my favorite kind of announcement to make, but we need to be on the same page with this. Our good friend and director of children's religious education, Reverend Jack Gaede, was in a serious car accident yesterday. That was on her way to a meeting here at All Souls. She was taken to the hospital where she was observed and had various tests and was released late in the afternoon. Aside from a painful bruise across her chest and shoulder where the seatbelts caught her, she appears to be okay. She's resting at her brother's house today, and we expect to see her back in the office later this week. She will, however, be occupied with buying a new car. Our RE assistant, Melanie Yackel, will be filling in this morning, and she is here and taking care of that. Thank you.
Good morning. morning. So, in Anthony's absence, he's asked me to teach you guys a new song this morning. So, I'm going to sing it once through with Daniel, and then I'm going to ask you to join me. We're going to sing this many times through the service, so you will definitely learn a new song today.
There are so many boundaries that are good and healthy. The boundary of self-differentiation, the boundary between healthy relationships and abuse, the boundary between appropriate behavior and sexual harassment. These boundaries are necessary to keep us healthy and happy and safe. There are some borders and boundaries that are unhelpful, walls and fences that separate us from ourselves and from each other. Some of these fences restrict us from living fully empowered lives as relational beings. Some of these walls prevent us from achieving a strong and diverse community of neighbors who deeply care for each other. Some of these borders prevent us from achieving a full acceptance of who we are, beautiful in our complexity, perfect in our imperfection, and broken open to our wholeness. These are the boundaries that must be transgressed. When someone tells us that we shouldn't trust our Muslim neighbor, they are trying to plant the seed of distrust. They are trying to separate us from our neighbor. Let us gladly respond by accepting our Muslim neighbor's invitation to join them for a meal in their home. When someone tells us that we have to choose between authenticity and acceptance, they are setting up a false dichotomy. Let us respond by calling their bluff and gladly watching that house of cards crumble. We need to be a people willing to break through some unhelpful boundaries. We need to deconstruct some of our internal, self-imposed boundaries that are restricting us from being our full and beautiful selves. And we need to deconstruct some of the systemic facades keeping us separate from each other. Knowing the other might reveal all sorts of things about the other and about ourselves. In this context, a little transgression might be a good thing. In fact, in these perilous times, breaking through these unhelpful borders might be all that saves us. Sierra?
Good morning. My name is Sierra, and I light this chalice for acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations.
Thank you, Sierra. Will you join me for the words of our covenant? Together we affirm, goodwill is the spirit of this church.
And service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace,
to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Please join me, hymn number 374. Please be seated. We come together this morning conscious of so many dangers and losses in our world. Car accidents that could have been so much worse. Innocent people enjoying a walk in the park in New York. Killed and injured by a person filled with hate. A planet endangered by pollution and climate change. And yet we know that courage and creativity are all around us too. Everywhere, people reach across barriers to make friendships and make peace. Everywhere, people think outside the box to create art and beauty, to invent medicines and machines that make life better, to give us all hope and widen our horizons. So let me ask you this. When was the last time that you broke through a wall or went beyond a boundary? Maybe it was intentionally because you thought the fence was stupid. Maybe it was an accident because you didn't even know there was a border. Maybe it was because you were just tired of it. Maybe it was because you saw a new possibility that nobody had ever tried. Maybe what you did had a good outcome, maybe not. Maybe you learned something important, or maybe someone else did. I invite you to think about that for a moment, right now, and then turn to someone sitting near you, hopefully not the person you came in with. Wish them a good morning and share something about your own breakthrough. Extra points if the person you share with is a child or teen. Daniel will play some music to bring us back together in a couple of minutes.
Our children out to their classes right now.
Fail to notice
sets of legs they had, 2 faces peering out of one giant head, so they could watch all around them as they talked while they read, and they never knew nothing of love. It was before the origin of love. Origin of love. The origin of love. Origin of love. Now there was 3 sexes, then one that looked like 2 men glued up back to back. They called the children of the sun, and similar in shape and girth was the children of the earth. They built out 2 girls rolled up in one, and the children of the moon was like a fork shoved on a spoon. They was part sun, part earth, part daughter, part son. The origin of love. Now the gods grew quite scared of our strength and defiance, and Thor said, I'm gonna kill them all with my hammer, like I killed the giants. But Zeus said, no, you better let me use my lightning like scissors, like I cut the legs off the whales, dinosaurs and the lizards. And then he grabbed up some bolts, he let out a laugh, said I'll split them right down the middle, gonna cut them right up in half. Near the storm clouds gathered above into great balls of fire. And then fire shot down from the sky in bolts like shining blades of a knife. And it ripped right through the flesh of the children of the sun and the moon and the earth. And some Indian god took the wound unto a hole, around to our belly to remind us the price we paid. And Osiris, the gods of the Nile, gathered up a big storm to blow a hurricane, to scatter us away. A flood of wind and rain, the sea of tidal waves, to wash us away. And if we don't behave, they'll cut us down again, and we'll be hopping around on 1 foot, looking through one eye. Last time I saw you, we just split in 2. You was looking at me, I was looking at you. You had a way so familiar, I could not recognize, 'cause you had blood on your face, I had blood in my eyes. But I could swear by your expression that the pain down in your soul was the same, the one down in mine. That's the pain that cuts a straight line down through the heart. We called it love. We wrapped our arms around each other, gotta shove ourselves back together. We were making love, making love. It was a cold, dark evening, such a long time ago, when by the mighty hand of joy
When I was asked to come here today, I sat up late into the nights following the phrase, transgressing boundaries looping on repeat through my mind, racking my brain for any and all instances that I've ever transgressed boundaries in my life, looking for stories, tales, examples, lessons, anything really. It shouldn't have been difficult, as I've spent a lifetime overcoming, or at the very least attempting to, various boundaries, but all the same, I sat at a complete loss, and I found myself baffled as to why. I'm disabled, I'm mentally ill, I'm a young queer woman, and to be exact, I'm 26, I'm a lesbian, and I'm a non-binary genderqueer person. I'm also transgender, though not in the traditional sense of the word that the majority are used to, but yet I am all the same. I'm also something you may not have ever heard of. I'm intersex. You may have heard this word before, you may not have. That's okay. We've also been called hermaphrodites, although that term is archaic and frankly, entirely biologically, anatomically, and scientifically incorrect. We inhabit the space between, the space kept hidden from view, the space the world isn't meant to know about, that shameful secret space that must be squeezed tighter and tighter until eradicated. That's where we exist. Or do we? We live in a world of binaries, right and wrong, good and evil, black and white, male and female. In that world, we cannot be allowed to exist. Our existence is an affront to the norm, the accepted, to the rules set in place originally by an unknown force that so many, too many, blindly, violently agree is universal law. But we do exist. We exist. We have always existed. We will always exist. And there are far, far more of us than most will ever realize. We are everywhere, all around you, hidden from view. We're shoved into boxes we don't belong in, can't fit inside of. We've been molded into new forms, and I mean this literally. We've been cut apart, sliced up, and restitched back together to resemble whoever the knife wielder decides we should be, a stranger's idea of perfection before we're even old enough to know that we exist. But what they fail to understand is that it doesn't change who we truly are. It's merely a sham, a sick masquerade. We're still here. Most of us live our lives in secret, taught from an early age to never expose our deep, dark shame, the shame of difference. We adapt to our molding and we live the lie. I find myself frequently thinking about the body, what it truly is, what it means, what a real relationship with one looks like. The body is so much more than a mere vessel, a cocoon of flesh to carry us through this life. I am learning this. I am learning how to love and embrace my body in all of its imperfections, but most importantly, in all of its glory. It stumbles, it falters, but what doesn't? Sometimes I think it might be here as a teacher of sorts, but I know in my soul that it's more than mere flesh, meat, bones, so much more. And in these past several years, I've chosen to live openly as the intersex person that I am. I am different, I am normal, I am okay. I live in the space between, and yes, it does exist, and it will overcome the squeeze that it's been put through to grow back into that all-expansive, infinite glory that some creator out there intended it to be before falling prey to the folly and hubris of man. To transgress a boundary, it doesn't have to be a moment in time. It doesn't require an anecdote, a single story, an entire collection. It needn't be a flashy statement, a moment of grandeur. It requires no stage, no marching, no screaming through a megaphone, no Molotov cocktails, no throwing your arms to the sky on a balcony above thousands. Sometimes, to transgress a boundary, all that's required is to dare to merely exist as yourself in a world which says that such a thing is unacceptable. And I wrote a poem a while back about my feelings. And it's a poem that I wrote directing back to my younger self as a message of sorts, if I could say something to a younger Allison. But I think it still resonates with myself today, and it can resonate with anyone, not just intersex people or transgender people, anything, anyone, I hope. Okay. I look at you, I see you, all bright-eyed with lids heavy from the weight of despair. Just keep those eyes open, child. Never let them close, not even for a second, because you know, you see them lie in wait, ready for the pounce. But I see you. The shadows they cast are all around you. You feel the cold air burn down to your bones, and I can see your shivers. But shadows are transparent by nature, by design. But your design is one chiseled into stone. And yes, stone can be soft, softer than most will realize, can allow to be conceptualized. Yes, it can be porous, seemingly made more of holes than a solid. And yes, stone may erode through time, but the waves required are innumerable. It takes glaciers to make valleys, and the canyons formed by rivers, though treacherous, carry a beauty unparalleled by any other. You've gazed upon these canyons, seen the way the light reflects from the rocks, the archways to create new palettes still yet always uncaptured by man's brush. Seen the shadows cast down by the light from the clouds, shadows larger than cities, swallowed up by the mouth of the earth. Men become lost in these canyons. They enter uninvited, thinking that they and they alone can conquer their hidden depths in ways no one has managed before, and most do not leave whole or at all. And those who do exit in any form know of their folly, that some things God created to be unconquerable. Rain will fall, waves will crash. New rivers will emerge from below, from the mountains above, cascading, flowing through spaces previously thought desert, flooding the plains and carving the ground. Child, let yourself be carved into a canyon. Let the storm shadows fall down upon you, and then swallow them as if they were the soft, airy clouds themselves. For rock, even though a softer stone is weighted to this ground, belongs to this earth, and so do you.
Thank you for sharing. Will you join with me in responding? Please rise.
Our wonderful new intern minister chose this poem. It was written a few years ago by a North Carolina student who self-identifies as Christian and straight. His performance in a college competition went wild, crazy, viral on YouTube, internet, everywhere, and suddenly he was in Time magazine. It's called God is Gay. What if I told you God is gay? Do you think belligerent Bible belters would still holler hate speech to the hilltops in his name? Or do you think they would reread the scriptures they say they swear and survive by? See, I've been reading the Bible again lately too, and I think I've taken a leaf from their holy book, picking passages for my purposes, which, in short, is to let you know it's very possible God is gay. I mean, think about the book of Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And it wasn't just good, it was fabulous. I mean, seriously, what else is our planet but the pinnacle of exterior design? And I don't mean to generalize here, but it certainly seems like the Garden of Eden was designed by a queer eye divine eye for the straight guy. But some Christians would go as far as to call God's creations abominations. Heretics calling themselves faithful, when that faith is full of the belief that only God may pass judgment. Matthew 7:1, judge, and you too shall be judged. Luke 6:37, condemn not, and you shall not be condemned. Fred Phelps, 2006, you're going to hell, God hates fags. A history lesson. A faggot is a bundle of sticks originally used as kindling for fires that engulfed gays when they were burned at the stake. People were firewood. But when Moses came across wood on fire, he saw God in it. What is a burning bush but bundles of branches on fire. Isn't it funny how faggots and God can look just the same sometimes? Now keep in mind, Jesus had 2 dads and he turned out just fine. In fact, Jesus had 2 dads and a surrogate mother who never had sex with either one of them. Maybe Mary was lesbian. And I remember that prayer going, Hail Mary, full of grace, not full of sin. Pray for us sinners. For we have become blinded by bigotry, and forgotten that God gave us the rainbow as a promise that we will never be flooded again, either with rain or ignorance. Stand more united under God's rainbow than all of his denominations do around the cross. See, I was brought up believing that my Savior loved us all and never had to specify, no homo. But if you have hate in your heart, say it, don't pray it, don't teach it, and for the love of God, don't preach it. Because I am tired of the fire and brimstone sermons, slinging slurs when they're not firing brimstones, from voices that should be filled with love and praise instead of raised with hate and rage. I'm a Christian, and I believe in saying the Christian thing, which used to sound like, love thy neighbor as thyself. But now it sounds more like hate at the top of your picket signs. The closest thing to God being, hell is waiting for you. They're passing out damnation pamphlets filled with out-of-context Bible verses, trying to define God when his meaning is clear. He is acceptance, he is pride, he is humility, he is just. God is perfection. God is protection. God is love. But most importantly, God is gay.
One aspect of transgressions is that they can be conscious or unconscious acts. The person committing the transgression can be aware of the boundaries they've crossed and do so knowingly, or they might be unaware of the implications of their act, not even realizing the crime they're committing. For most of my life, homosexuality has been considered taboo or unnatural by many parts of society, particularly religion. Now, I didn't grow up in what I would consider to be very conservative congregations. It was mostly United Methodist. And I don't remember any direct messages from the pulpit or direct messages from my parents about homosexuality in my early years. But still, that sense of this was so much easier in practice. That sense of wrongness or shame seeped into me from our culture. So thinking back on my awareness of sexuality, I remember some early experimentation in elementary school with neighborhood friends. Happens with a lot of kids. And then nothing much until 1983 or 1984. I was about 15, sophomore in high school outside of D.C. Does anybody want to take a guess why that era really kind of sticks out? I'll give you 2 words. Summer Olympics. Suddenly, the media, TV and magazines, there was no internet, was full of pictures of athletes, male athletes, swimmers, divers, gymnasts, wrestlers, a heady prospect for a 15-year-old gay teenager heading into puberty. I cut out pictures from Time, from People, Sports Illustrated, and saved them in a folder hidden in a desk drawer. Now, I wasn't quite at the point of putting together my desire to look at those pictures with the idea of homosexuality, but I knew I had to hide those pictures. Now, in school, I heard the fag, queer, gay jokes. I mean, who doesn't in junior high and high school? But I don't think I actually ever equated those epithets to what I was feeling. They didn't mean me, they were just insults. Now, whether that was subconsciously denying or I was just that naive, I'm not really sure. An example of this is that my family moved back to Nebraska the summer before my junior year. And early in that year, I'm telling friends at our new school about how the sports teams used to jeer the band kids and drama kids at my old high school by calling us band fags and drama fags. And we embraced that term kind of in defiance. Well, they didn't believe me. So suddenly, in the middle of the lunch hour, I stand up in the cafeteria and shout, "I'm a band fag and a drama fag and proud of it." Surprisingly, I didn't get any harassment, at least not to my face. Then the thing is, I didn't even think about what other people might take that to mean. However, when I showed up at our 5-year reunion with a boyfriend, no one seemed all that surprised. So, by the end of my senior year, the concepts, sexuality, and my feelings were finally connecting. I realized that I was probably gay. I was offered a 4-year, full-ride Army ROTC scholarship to a school in San Antonio, which I took. Because how are you going to explain to your parents that you're turning down free college over something that I still wasn't completely sure about? I mean, I hadn't even kissed a guy yet. How could I know for sure? So this was the summer of 1986, 7 years before Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So being openly gay in the Army or even ROTC was not an option. This time, my transgressions occurred knowingly. I met openly gay people, and I dated a few boys on campus while I was a cadet in the Corps. Adding to the thrill of that first kiss with another man was the knowledge of the trouble it could cause if the Army found out. Fortunately, there was an out. I wasn't on the hook for any financial obligation or military service unless I continued the scholarship into my sophomore year and beyond. So, at the end of my freshman year, I turned in my uniform and I walked away. Now, I came out to my parents over that holiday break, and they weren't real keen on the idea of me going back to that school. So I ended up transferring to Grinnell College in Iowa, a very liberal arts college. After a year of hiding, I was now free to openly explore my sexuality and find my own identity as a gay man. But all I really had to go off of was a limited number of stereotypes. The butch leather man, or the sissy femme, which led to more unknowing transgressions. I mean, who knew that even among the outcasts, there were boundaries that shouldn't be crossed? At the first meeting of the gay community on campus, I arrived 20 minutes late, having spent 3 hours primping, flounced for all I was worth, plopped down on the couch next to a lesbian from my dorm, going, "Hi!" and terrified every gay man there. Needless to say, dating life at Grinnell didn't really happen. Over the next few years, I tried being butch with a leather jacket and combat boots, and even tried what now might be called gender fluid, spending most of one semester in skirts, never finding anything right. Eventually, I stopped trying so hard and realized that who I am as a gay man is pretty much who I was before I identified as gay. Energetic, sometimes dramatic, talk with my hands, cry easily. But, I also learned that, dressing up with heels and a skirt and jewelry and makeup can sometimes be a hell of a lot of fun. Don't want to do it every day. Oh my God, those shoes. But I still deal with transgressions every day. I transgress gender roles in my career. I'm a nurse, a man in a predominantly female field, even more so in my chosen specialty, pediatrics. I'm a gay man taking care of children. Think about that in terms of what's been revealed on what's going on in Hollywood in the past couple of weeks. In public, even after the legalization of same-sex marriage, it's still a transgressive act to hold my husband's hand or to kiss him in the restaurant or even on the front walk of our house as I go to work. Living as an honest, open, and authentic gay man, especially in this day and age, is still a transgressive act.
Will you join me in the response?
Good morning. We are Sarah and Manny Pedram, and we are privileged to introduce the special offering this morning.
We are here today to ask your continued support for the United Nations, UNO, the Unitarian Universalist United Nations. Since early 1970, when I was asked to be the first member of the UNO, the first envoy of the UNO, followed by Charles Webb and later Sarah Pedram until recently. We have annually supported, celebrated the United Nations, and we continued with your strong support, continue to have the UNO office funded. We ask you to do the same today because it's consistent with our commitment to create and maintain a larger world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all.
The UUUNO is our direct connection to the United Nations and keeping the UN strong. Many members of this church, in addition to the annual special offering and their UUUNO membership, have made All Souls a blue ribbon congregation. We have received plaques for several years in recognition of this designation, and they hang on the wall out where you enter and exit the west door. Hope you'll take a look and see what it says on the plaque. Your generous contribution today enables the UUUNO and Bruce Knotts, its executive director, who has several times been in our pulpit here, to continue its educational mission in support of the UN and its global work to maintain peace and justice worldwide. The offering will now be gratefully received, and we thank you for your generous support.
I am what I am. I am what I am. I am my own special creation. So come take a look. Give me the hook or the ovation. It's my world that I want to have a little pride in. My world, and it's not a place I have to hide in. Life's not worth a damn till you can say, hey world, I am what I am. I am what I am. I don't need praise, I don't need pity. I bang my own drum, some think it's noise, I think it's pretty. And so what if I love each feather and each spangle? Why not try to see things from a different angle? Your life's just a sham till you can shout out loud, I am what I am. I am what I am, and what I am needs no excuses. I deal my own deck, sometimes the ace, sometimes the deuces. It's one life and there's no return and no deposit. One life, so it's time to open up your closet. Life's not worth a damn till you can say, hey world, I am what I
Would you join with us now in words of dedication for the offering? We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create a just and compassionate society.
Well, we've already heard a couple sermons today, so I guess we don't need to hear mine. We might be transgressing a few boundaries today and going beyond 12:15, but I'm glad that you're here with me. Where are you in today's story? What deceptive line of thinking have you subverted? Maybe you broke the power of a lie that had been holding you under its thumb. Maybe you used to tell yourself that you had to choose between happiness and health. Or maybe the choice was between being honest and being loved. Whatever the case, what does your life look like now with those walls torn down? And which walls still need tearing down? Maybe some form of addiction is holding you captive. Maybe you are living with fear of the unknown or fear of the other. Or maybe you are just stuck in a routine that is slowly sucking away your spirit and your joy. Today is a day to celebrate the stories of people who have found their power and authenticity while swimming against the current. I hope you find resonance and respect difference when you encounter these stories of unique tenacity. Growing up, I had been taught that homosexuality was not a legitimate or valid way of living life as a good Christian. It was made clear to me in no uncertain terms that being gay and being Christian were mutually exclusive, which was especially hard as I was coming to terms with my own gay identity. All I knew was an exclusivist and dogmatic religious community, and as a youth, I did not have the imaginative power to imagine another way of being religious. I felt trapped. And it wasn't just my religious community keeping me fenced in. Heteronormativity functions like many other dominant norms and sometimes oppressive regimes, sometimes silently and often effectively. It was not so much a flood of messages saying straight is great. It was more a steady and constant drip of subtle messages implying that gayness was off, funny, weird, unnatural, different, dangerous. And in the schoolyard, it was the worst thing you could be. Smear the queer. In so many ways, I felt fenced in. For we don't all live in a progressively evolving, beauty-drenched world. Many of us on the margins live in an imperfect and complex world with many setbacks. I was told that my being was sinful. I was told that my innermost desires were demonic. Everywhere I looked, it seemed there was judgment and fear of gay people. I was told on a consistent basis that what I knew most about myself, most intimately, was disgusting. Not just less than beautiful, but the opposite of beautiful. When I first came out as gay, I refused to go to pride parades. I refused to be fabulous or flamboyant. I was so used to the fences that I couldn't imagine living completely without them. So once I broke free from them, I fenced myself in. I made myself smaller because I knew that the label that I had accepted for myself was so threatening to certain people. I still wanted so badly to be tame and normative in the midst of my queerness. I'm just like you, I claimed just a little too loudly, trying to hide the thing that made me so special and powerful. You see, I was taught that sexuality was shameful, secret, private, and had nothing to do with my spirituality. In fact, in my study of the Christian scriptures, I found a verse where the Apostle Paul admonishes men to marry women if and only if they burn with passion. But he makes it very clear that celibacy is the holiest option. I was taught that the holier and more spiritual decision was to deny the flesh, to ignore my body. But something inside of me was calling me deeper, calling me to transgress this strict boundary between body and spirit. I knew there was a greater truth somewhere deeper, and I was committed to finding it. I began taking dance and yoga classes, longing to be more connected to my body. And in these embodied activities, my spirit came alive. I wonder almost daily what would have happened to me if I hadn't fought for this power and agency to heal my body-spirit divide. But this whole and integrated self did not bloom overnight. There had been so many impediments to growth. Infertile soil, droughts of denial, the The weeds of self-hatred had almost suffocated me, yet still I grew. As my own sexuality was blossoming within me, and I was finally able to see it as the beautiful cherry blossom tree that it was, I saw that my tree had grown so big that it had broken down the fences around it. They had tried to fence me in, and I even fenced myself in for a bit. But this cherry blossom tree just wouldn't quit. More than I knew anything else about God, Jesus, heaven, hell, or the afterlife, I knew I was gay. The belief that I held more passionately than the Nicene Creed was the belief that I was beautiful, as I was, and that I did not need to be ashamed, secretive, or apologetic about it anymore. This cherry blossom tree was here to stay. I jumped fairly quickly to being a revolting queer and a radical fairy. I revolted against heteronormativity and rigid masculinity, and I embraced the power of my femininity, choosing to upend gender and fashion expectations. I started celebrating the controversy caused by my sexuality. I even went so far as to reclaim the word faggot, a term whose origin came from a bundle of sticks once used to start a fire to burn queers, radicals, witches, and heretics. I got involved with some projects to reclaim gay slurs by creating beautiful, vivid, and color-soaked images to poke fun at and defang the sting of those slurs. My favorite is an image of a bundle of sticks bound together on a brightly colored dance floor, a faggot on a dance floor. In fact, I loved the image so much that I added flames licking up the side and tattooed it on my body, a constant and ever-present reminder of one of my favorite ways of being, a flaming faggot on a dance floor. At this point, when someone calls me a faggot in an attempt to marginalize or demean me, I just laugh and thank them for the compliment. Because do you know how much strength it takes to be a faggot? To feel completely broken by the world? To feel at times like I should just give up. But instead, to double down and say, fuck no, to any voice telling me that I am anything less than beautiful. This act of boundary breaking takes guts and tenacity. It requires a strong core of convictions and deep roots of resiliency. Some of my biggest heroes and inspirations are queer in some way. Maybe yours are too. May we live up to the legacy and the panache of the queer people who came before us. And now, 13 years after breaking free from the fences that constrain me, I am confident that I can live and thrive in any climate and weather any storm. I am not invincible, nor do I pretend to be. I still need watering and pruning, but my trunk is strong and my roots are deep. Some of you sitting here today are cisgender and straight and might not feel yourself represented here today. Well, let me just say two things. First, it is good and important to center the voices and stories of those on the margins, the queer, the non-normative. What a privilege it is for our community here to be made the richer through the expression and celebration of those among us with marginalized identities. And to be clear, my life is enriched by being here in a space where I know that I am fully embraced and welcomed in the complexity of my sexuality, and where people across the gender spectrum are welcome not just to exist and survive, but to express and thrive. And secondly, I wonder, what strength has it taken for you to be you? What fences have you busted out of? What voices did you refuse to listen to? What was keeping you small? You might not know what strength it takes to be me, but what about you? Today, may we know the strength of transgressing unhelpful boundaries. May we find the wholeness of our full selves. May we know the radical act of bridging our chasms of difference. And may we notice that our loving is a miracle. Make it so, and amen. is a brokenness out of which comes the unbroken, a shatterness out of which blooms the unshatterable. There is a sorrow beyond all grief, which leads to joy, and a fragility out of whose depths emerges strength. There is a hollow space, too vast for words, through which we pass with each loss, out of whose darkness we are sanctioned into being. There is a cry, deeper than all sound, whose serrated edges cut the heart as we break open to the place inside, which is unbreakable and whole, while learning to sing.